today was, pretty much a normal Wednesday for us, base. And any questions?
Actually, a couple of extensions. Roach first, just sort of what did it mean to get that?
Yeah, when we left for the bye, George and I talked about there were, a handful of opportunities to at least visit with these guys. Speaking on Malcolm, his versatility and there's a lot of things. His flexibility, position-wise, and then all the other things that he brings to the team. It was a good fit.
And then Wattenberg, without him, and then the continuity you have on the offensive line moving forward.
Yeah, good. And I think it's a credit to Luke. We lost a real good center to free agency a couple years ago. And so, again, there's a vision, good young player, and it's important to keep those guys in your building. I've been in a position where you're trying to draft a center, and it's one of those unique positions. If you say in the draft we're going to draft a center that we feel like can start year one, man, that becomes difficult. And so we're excited for him. And then of course Will, all three of those guys.
You guys have handed out extensions to so many members of this offensive line and defensive line. Just how key, how important has that been to building this program?
I think it's real important, and I think it's not easy sometimes. You're identifying traits, and I think I said this, internally when I came here. I think that really those two key positions are so important. You're building your front on defense and on offense, and if you don't pay attention to it, it becomes challenging to do a lot of the other things you want to do. And so, the offensive line can kind of permeate the building, and then the defensive line, the way they're playing, including the outside backer, it's hard to find those type of players in free agency every year or without paying a hefty fee. So keeping that continuity, I think, is important.
Coach, how pleased and maybe even surprised you that Alex Singleton's already back out here?
I think we felt, and look, we didn't get into it, but I think we felt realistically when we, obviously the scans and all of that stuff were important. And when those came back positive, man, the relief just for Alex, never mind the football player. And then, but that news came prior to the bye. We felt confident, with he and Patrick and a few of these guys we've been without. This was kind of a target game.
The fourth quarter point differential that you have, how much do you think that's related to winning a line of scrimmage and having that? Yeah,
great question. Look, I love that number relative to, the way this team plays. They feel like they're in every game. I want that number to get better in the first half and start faster. I thought we did a little bit a couple weeks ago against Kansas City. We were going to take the ball. They won the toss, so we ended up with the ball. So there was a number of things self-scout-wise that we look at and try to implement here going into this stretch of 6 games.
Sean, obviously you're week to week, but when you have the big picture and it's so close to you and you're up 2 games with 6 to play, do you have to reel in a team at all?
I think, look, on Monday, all I tried to do was I can't assume everyone on this team understands the playoff format. It switched in 20, right? We added the 7th team. So beginning in 2020, there was only 1 team. But analytically, 25 years of the 1 and the 2 seed that didn't play. And then, the goal obviously is the end game. And so you're in a position where they can kind of see like, hey, if you're able to capture the 1 seed, and it used to be the 2 seed, you eliminate a game. and that's significant. You know, those early years for me in New Orleans, we were the 2 seed and ended up at Chicago as the 1 seed, and you know, in tough weather. And I remember after that loss feeling like, man, we got to find a way to play this game at home. And then there was a few years later in the NFC Championship game. So just from the studies, and look, that doesn't mean have to. You know, we've seen years and years of teams shoot Tampa most recently on the road, and then won the Super Bowl. But you know, each week, you know, we build up this equity of where we're at, and I think certainly the buy-in, and these guys are smart enough to know what each of these games counts for.
Coach, what did you want your players to take advantage of this great action that you guys had?
I think, look, mentally, I think it's important to get away. The guys that were rehabbing were here. That's really it, you know. Look, I've told you this before. Those first 2 or 3 years in New Orleans, I don't know what our record after the bye was. Andy was at Philly. I called him. He had a real good record after the bye, and he kind of told me what he did, and I adopted that, and it helped. You know, when you're young, you're looking at, all right, what else could, you know, and really these guys needed to just get away. And so, yeah, I remember that conversation, and then, you know, hearing that and then playing them a couple weeks back after the bye, I didn't really enjoy, but but his numbers have been real good.
Coach, we might get some bad weather on Sunday night. They say it's going to rain hours. How does that change?
I think it's a great question. It's one of the topics today. You know, new sodded field. No one's played on it. And then we got the my cause, my cleats. Well, what if those cleats aren't the right shoes, right? And so making sure we understand the field conditions. You know, we'll do wet ball drill. We'll do a lot of that. Temperature is similar. It'll be a little colder there. I think it was last 60-some% chance of rain. I can recall playing games there when it was rainy and cold, you know, almost that borderline, like, why isn't it snowing? It's so cold, but it's raining. And like an hour later, it might be snowing. But, you know, whatever the conditions are, wherever we play, you know, good defenses, rushing, you know, there's a lot of things that travel, and we'll have to be ready for this team.
Sean, going back to Wattenberg, where have you seen his game sort of grow since he's...
Well, his football IQ is real sharp. He's athletic. He does a good job into the second level. He's really improved in his protections. Yeah, all of it. Like you see the curve still going upward. So those are a few things. But
Do you anticipate any possible more extensions this season, or is it difficult with the bye?
it's hard to say. You know, that would be something that, you know, would be in internal discussions, and we kind of would go from there.
Coach, you shared this story about when you faced with DeMarcus Ware, you didn't know if he was going to play or not, and the lessons learned there. When it comes
that was
Daniel.
The exact story was he didn't practice Wednesday didn't practice Thursday, didn't practice Friday, and then he comes running out for introductions, and 3 sacks, 2 fumbles caused. So we prepare for the system, and their system really, you know, there's a reason Marcus is there. You know, he can run this very fluently, and it can beat you with his legs, and so you know, we prepare for what we're seeing scheme wise, but in this, sometimes when there's a quarterback change, there can be a move in what they want to do. And in this case, I think there's a reason he's there, because it fits with very much what they're doing at the line. You know, he can beat you with his feet. He's athletic. All of those things.
Do you weight games more that Quinn called on defense, I suppose?
Yeah, we looked at all those numbers. I know he's just started calling, so we've looked at those. They've had some injuries. Really, honestly, going back to Dallas, you know, the last 2 years in Dallas, and then his early years with their defensive coordinator calling plays, all the pressure percent, man percent, zone, they were like dead on. And so we look at all of it, and then you look at the opponent they're playing. Sometimes it might be an opponent-driven game plan. So they do a number of things well. They do a good job disguising pressures, and so that's the key thing in this week is making sure we have answers. Much like a week ago, different system, but with Spags, there's a lot you got to cover, and I would say that that's the case this week.
Sean, it looked like Jada had some good reps on Kelsey a couple weeks back. What have you seen, across the last?
Yeah, look, he's a twitchy mover and gives you good flexibility. He's got high football IQ, which helps when it comes to leverage, understanding the defense. And I think he's just so, when you lose a guy like Pat, and you draft to your strengths, it's one of the reasons, you do that. And so that additional playing time is just more time on task for him. But we knew skill set, good ball skills. He has the pick six the other day. Now, yeah, I mean, I'm pleased with his progress.
When Pat was out,
Was I judicious there? Holy cow.
when Pat was out the last 3 games, what kind of stuff did he do to help the young defensive backs, the guys you're placing?
Yeah, look, I think his presence in the room, you got to know this, you got to pry words from Pat to begin with, right? So, but I think, any of these guys that miss time are still involved in the meetings, and so that presence in the meeting would be the same, whether they're playing or not, and so certainly it's great to get someone like him back in the lineup and ready to go.
Sean, when you extend a player during the season, does the boost it gives the team in the locker room ever part of the
I think, yeah, I mean, we just finished playing that song as you guys were leading in, money, 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 or whatever, Yeah, I think the guys want to see other guys have success and also be financially well off. And I think the consistency and how we want to approach that, I think, is important.
Sean, are you maybe a little off the beaten path, but are you still hoping to see Drew Sanders this year?
Yeah, but it's going to be later. But yes. And we monitor the progress. Bo goes through the report. And I don't have the game, but and honestly, the same could be said with Dobbins.
Yeah, you think that may not be, he might get a chance to.
Yeah. It wouldn't be soon, but that has a chance to happen.
In this time, JK, you guys obviously know kind of traditional, maybe bigger back on the roster. Are you comfortable with the group that you have?
I am. And look, I felt like we had limited snaps to some degree, but man, Jaleel's played a lot of good football for us. And so, meanwhile, he and RJ both are coming on. Adam did a good job in some of the sub protection stuff. We felt with Kansas City, there's some looks where you're always paying attention to the size of the back in third down pickup. And so he had a few rhino tags where he was in on third down and was fantastic.